kind of really go down the line. Jaxon Smith-Njigba, JSN. He's got a wrist fracture. You did a little homework on that one.
Yeah, so I did as much homework as you possibly can. There are going to be a lot of points that you have to consider when it comes to the Seattle Seahawks. Number one being, don't trust what the players say. Don't trust what Pete Carroll says. This is just one singular example. Pete Carroll last year said Kenneth Walker and his groin issue, which last year it was an actual true hernia, an intestinal hernia. He said, not a big deal. We're going to take care of it in-house or whatever he said. He'll be fine. It should be quick. Turns out Kenneth Walker, I believe, missed week 1 or went right up to week 1 down to the wire. He missed several weeks for his surgery. Similarly, John Harbaugh can do the same thing. He said the same thing for a groin strain that Rashad Bateman had. Rashad Bateman ended up having surgery. So obviously these things can't really trust it when it comes to the coaches either. So what we do know, so let's strip it down, right? We know Adam Schefter reported they think Jaxon Smith-Njigba can be back by week 1. So I'll start with the best case because I think that's what people want to hear. In a best case scenario world, I'll tell you, it is possible, it is plausible that what happened is he landed on his wrist. Jaxon Smith-Njigba landed on his wrist, fractured a small bone. They go in, it's a tiny incision. They pluck it out. They sew him back up. The only concern really is the incision. 10 days, 14 days, he can be back to rehab and doing what he needs to do. That's possible. That's the best case scenario. In that scenario, he's still kind of on the border for week 1, but could go week 1. Here's the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario is that this is a wrist fracture, and it's a wrist fracture that's one of the most common wrist fractures, and that's going to be a 6 to 8 week casting. Not just 6 to 8 weeks when he's back. It's 6 to 8 weeks in a cast. Then he'll have to rehab. Then he'll have to come back. Now, that is the worst case scenario. I'm not saying that's what's going on. I don't think that's what's going on. And I don't think it's the most likely option or the most likely thing that's going on. There just aren't a ton of surgeries that would say you can come back in 3, maybe 4 weeks. But especially when it comes to the wrist and the hand, and I'm telling you, I work with wrists and hands all day. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a small fracture. For example, something like what's called a scaphoid fracture, something that's like on the outside of the wrist. And that fracture, you can just go in or do nothing for it, but we knew he was going to have surgery. So they maybe, like I said, plucked it out of there. For now, I would not count on seeing Jaxon Smith-Njigba until week 2, 3-ish. I think that's like the most likely outcome. Can he be back week 1? I think so. I wouldn't plan on it. So you can still, here's the thing though, I think this is where I lose a lot of people, or maybe where I don't do a good enough job of communicating. Any player on this planet, when it comes to an injury that we assume isn't going to be a problem with him, and I don't think it's going to be a problem for him, if you draft that player, if he falls to the 6th round, I think that's still fine. I think if you miss 2, at most 3 games in this scenario that we're discussing, which I think is possible, you're still going to be okay, and you're still going to get that value back. Don't panic on early season volume. Don't panic for early season, losses of games. I still think that based on where JSN was going, he's going to fall probably to around the 6th. I'm still okay taking him there, but I'm not going to go any higher, but I'm also not going to go any lower. Like, this is pretty much like let's take it day by day, and it shouldn't be an extended absence, like I said, unless they're totally pulling, the wool over our eyes.
And that's the thing that that I think is really important that you're talking about, is the injury realism. When they're talking about week 1, it's really talking about the season after that. He's shown out so much, and I know you're a Seahawks fan. Does the missed time between now and the missed time on the field for a rookie, is that a concern for you?
I think, and this is a good point that Graham Barfield was bringing up in our Discord. It's not good, so I'm not going to say that it's good. I'm not going to spin it as being good. But I mean, he did play in the preseason game. That's when he got injured, and he's at least been in camp for the last 3-4 weeks, right? He's at least been there. He was there for the initial installs. Could he fall behind? Yes. Is it the best case scenario? No. But I think that if we're talking something like Rashad Penny, who broke his hand, I think, in like the first week of preseason as a rookie.
Right.
That's something different. But I do think that he could be okay, because for these rookies anyway, you're not really looking for a breakout until week 6, 7, 8. So I think that I don't think that in this specific scenario, the time lost is as big of a deal.
Okay, and plus he's already played really well, and so that's the one thing that I think that definitely that definitely helps. And I mean, maybe he picks up, maybe there's some rust at the beginning, shakes it off for a couple weeks, but yeah, and I think definitely looking. I mean, it's looking more at the back half of the season for him to really show out.
I think so. I don't think that this really changed when he would have broken out, if that makes sense. So if you're expecting him to break out week 6 or 7, whatever, I don't think that changes.